I remember about 5 years ago, I was in Portugal and I just listened to Can't Hurt Me for the first time. I was also in a porn addiction back then, going on streaks, doing no fap, having these horrible ups and downs, feeling a lot of shame, frustration, not feeling good enough, and no one knew about that at all. And so I read Can't Hurt Me because I got lost in the rabbit hole of self improvement and nofap. And I believe somehow that David Goggins was going to pull me out of this porn addiction. So I read it and I actually act on a lot of the advice in that book. I was actually very, very disciplined. I remember living in Portugal and I was living quite by the beach. And they had this like boardwalk, and there was this area where there was like some plants and I think some trees, and there's like this elevated stone that you could sit on, and people would sit on there, and I think there's a roundabout as well, and there's just like this stone like table kind of thing. I'm really butchering explaining that, so many people are going to click off by this point, but I remember doing push-ups on this elevated like stone table thing, where it was like in the center, like of this boardwalk, like everyone could see you. And I was so deluded. I'd run around the boardwalk by the beach. I do a few laps, and I do push-ups on this like stone in front of everyone, and then I do another lap, and then more push-ups, and then it just gets on going round. Oh, it was so messed up. I was trying to deal with a porn addiction. I'd literally be like listening to Can't Hear Me through my earphones while doing this like weird ritual of running and then push-ups. That might seem healthy to some people who believe in the discipline mentality, but looking back, it was very, very unhealthy. I don't know at what point I did, but I remember like maybe days or weeks after doing one of those rituals, maybe even on the same day, relapsing back in the flat I was staying in, and I remember like knocking over this bottle of red wine, and I remember the shards of glass on the floor, and I was like picking them up after relapsing, and I think it was at that moment where I was really like, yeah, like I'm deep in an addiction right now, like my head's a mess, because the only reason I knocked over that bottle of wine was because I had that foggy brain going on, where you're just a bit of a zombie and you're walking around like a bit clueless. I can't even remember it that well, but I just remember picking up those shards of glass with the red wine spilled on the tiles, and like kind of the wine was going into the dents of the tiles, and it was quite hard to like clear up in this flat all alone in Portugal. And I had an amazing time in Portugal. It was great, but I definitely went a bit too deep into the disciplined David Goggins mentality way of doing things. I actually went and lived in the mountains for a few months afterwards, after my time by the beach. And I remember there, everyone thought I was like the most disciplined person they'd ever met, because I'd wake up and do like 500 push-ups and meditate for an hour, and had all these weird, crazy rituals, just trying so desperately hard to stop watching porn. And again, that time in the mountains, eventually I ended up relapsing. Now, fast forward to today, 5 years later, I'm finally free from porn addiction, can talk about this openly with friends, family, girlfriend, YouTube. I just don't have that problem anymore, which is really, really great. However, what I found this week is I was still using some of the discipline-based, maybe David Goggins-esque ways of thinking to approach life, only for a couple of days, but I noticed that I was doing it. And the way in which I realised that I was doing this is, one, I was feeling terrible, and I actually got really, really lucky. I was feeling pretty terrible. I think I'd maybe been sort of beating myself up for not succeeding in some areas of life, and being super crazy ultra focused on eating healthy and going to the gym, and my actions were on point. Like, my actions were incredibly good. Like, if you were to have that mindset of David Goggins and you looked at my life for a few days, I think even he'd be like, yeah, I mean, fair play to you, you've done well there. But how I felt was bad. And this is the distinction, right? Is if you have a way of living which feels terrible and you're not actually happy with yourself, it's kind of like, what is the point in all this discipline? It makes no sense. Like, it's not a good way of living. And I want to illustrate this point by sharing what the turning point was for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't like in some deep, really, really bad place, but I did have a couple of days where I'd been really, really disciplined and I started to feel worse. And I know people listening may say, look, well, the discipline equals the results long term and it's going to lead to this, this and this. But the thing is, like, even like just generally before these 2 days of being maybe even more disciplined than usual, I think I'd been just as like I'd been a lot happier, and I hadn't really made that much of a difference in, you know, my actions in life. You know, still eating a reasonable amount, still going to the gym a reasonable amount, still working productivity wise, you know, like a really, really good amount, in my opinion. So like everything was already good, but in those 2 days, I'd basically, the only real differences I'd made is I began to eat even healthier, like make an even more conscious effort on my eating, and spend more time in the gym, and wake up earlier. They were the only things that I'd done in those 2 days where I felt pretty down. And I didn't really need to do those things. Like it didn't actually make that much of a difference, other than maybe David Goggins could be like, oh yeah, you've done well, like give me a pat on the back, and he wouldn't either. He'd be like, mate, you shut the hell up, like you're a little bitch, like you need to do more. Like, let's be honest, he wouldn't have even said like, well done. He would have been like, mate, get down and give me 100 push-ups, right? So this the rabbit hole of discipline and self-improvement, David Goggins, it doesn't work. It doesn't work long term. It's not sustainable. And here's why, right? So I ended up going for a walk with my girlfriend yesterday. She's got the dog at the moment, from her parents. Her parents are in Italy. So she's got this dog, and we go for a walk, and I love this dog called Mabel. It's super, super cute. I feel like we get on really, really well. Anyway, we're on this walk, and she's asking me, like, Tom, you know, these last couple of days, like, you've not really been yourself. You've been a bit down. Like, are you okay? Are we good? Like, what's going on? And it's always hard to, you know, open up to your own girlfriend about life and be vulnerable and share. But I kind of explained to her, yeah, you know, I've not been feeling so great. I'm not really sure why, actually. I don't know, because at that point in time I hadn't really put everything together and realised that by trying to be more disciplined than usual, I was actually just creating feelings of deprivation for food. I was feeling like I wasn't doing good enough. I was comparing myself, you know, comparison fatigue. It was just a bad way to live, and it's very rare for me to sort of get into that really ultra disciplined mentality, and hopefully this can be a bit of a warning to anyone who's ever gone down that route. So anyway, she says to me, all right, well, let's go back to mine and we'll read A Guide to Rational Living by Albert Ellis. That alone, I was like, damn, I've really hit the jackpot with with life right now, because to have my own girlfriend suggest going back to her, sitting on the sofa with her and the dog, and to read like some rational sense, like to read a great book together and then analyze it together after reading a chapter, which is what we do. I was like, damn, like that's amazing. And I was actually reflecting on that this morning and just feeling so genuinely grateful for that. So yeah, man, it's cool. It's cool to get yourself a woman who wants to help you grow and learn, and it's going to go on that journey with you, which is really, really, really important to me. So just for her to have that intuition to ask if I want to do that, and that empathy was a beautiful thing. So really, really grateful. So we go back to hers, and we just happen to open up this chapter called Is Reason Always Reasonable? Wow, what a chapter. I love this book already. A Guide to Rational Living, Albert Ellis. Go get it. I'm not affiliated. It's just a great book. So I open this chapter, and basically what Albert Ellis goes on to talk about is this paradox where if you try and be too rational, too logical, too reasonable about everything, like all the time, like maybe too analytical, too intellectual, if you try to do that, you know, kind of the extreme end of some Stoic philosophy, if you try to do that, well, you're no longer really being that much of like a human in a way. Like humans do have emotions. Like this is a good thing. Like this isn't a bad thing. It's just what happens is because people end up maybe getting addicted to porn or have really severe irrational biases, which leads to extreme thought patterns and beliefs, and therefore really negative sort of like poor judgment and bad outcomes in their life. But because that can be at the extreme end of irrational thinking, what humans may want to do is always act rationally. But it doesn't work. It doesn't really work like that. Like, instead, what this whole book is about, and completely ties in with my philosophy for life, is how do you become the happiest, how do you live like the happiest life, like long term, like both short term and long term, just as a whole, like how do you live the happiest life? And they even talk about in that chapter how this idea of, you know, don't live for tomorrow because tomorrow may never come is bullshit, because for most people tomorrow does come. Like, most people live to like they're 80, so don't just go down some hedonistic crazy insane route where you're just doing all this stuff because tomorrow may never come. Like, that's irrational. But at the same time, you don't want to go down the route of always like doing things today for tomorrow, in the sense of like, I'll be ultra disciplined because then I'm going to get this in the future, or I'm going to be ultra disciplined thinking that it's going to bring you certain benefits. But if you're doing it from a bad place, it just isn't. You're going to end up feeling burnt out, exhausted, tired, frustrated, probably deprived. So instead, what this book's on about is, okay, well, if the goal overall as a human is to increase quality of life, okay, and maybe that's to do with your happiness overall, well, always being rational, always analysing everything, and really sort of having so much judgment in a way, is actually not going to serve you. What we want to do is kind of pick and choose in a way what we're rational with, and more importantly, is use the rational motive therapy and use this philosophy, maybe use a script, if you know what I'm talking about there, if you're a Beyond Compulsion Academy member, use that for the areas of life where you really do want that change. But don't go to the extreme of maybe cutting out like YouTube and every single social media site and never eating a chocolate bar again. You know, what we teach, it isn't about living like David Goggins. It's not about living like a monk. It's about moment by moment making rational choices. You know, I spoke to Mary this morning. If you know who Mary is, you know, she's if you don't know who Mary is, I should say, if you don't know who Mary is, she's the founder really of Beyond Compulsion, the method. And we work together to help people stop watching porn. And we were talking this morning, and I'd recommended Line of Duty to her. It's a really good sort of anti-corruption police show in the UK, right, on Netflix. I recommended it to her, and she was like, yeah, I watched like 3 episodes tonight, it was great. And it's like, I love that, because it's just like, okay, yeah, you've watched a few hours of Netflix, like, bloody hell, like, you're not gonna, it's just like, that's fine, like, it's such a reasonable thing to do on a Friday night, like, watch a bit of Netflix. It's not to say that she's gone and binged Netflix, or she's got out of control. If she wants to do something, she can do that, and it's the same for me, and it's the same for you. If you want to do something, you can do that. But if the behaviour in your life that you want to do is causing you serious harm and it's having negative impact, definitely like a net negative impact on your life, then get some help and stop that behaviour. So like for me, for example, I'm not going to stop going on YouTube analytics, or I'm not going to stop eating sticky toffee pudding with custard, like my favourite dessert. I'm not going to stop going for a Sunday carvery with the family because I want to become more disciplined. Like today, for example, I'm going out for Nando's and playing football with some mates. It's like, yeah, I'm going to enjoy myself today. It's a Saturday. Like, there's so many things in my life which I want to enjoy. The behaviours like pornography, or maybe like scrolling compulsively, those behaviours are like, no, like I don't want the consequences of those behaviours in my life. So therefore, if I have the desire to engage in those behaviours, I will like deal with that very appropriately. I will deal with it effectively. I'll think through that choice rationally. That's where a tool like the script would come in. That's where you want to be like quite serious in your conviction to stop that behaviour. But it doesn't mean you have to then apply the philosophy of stopping a behaviour to every single little micro thing, because if you do that, then you end up in this paradox where you're actually ending up even more compulsive, because you're thinking and overthinking everything way more than ever. Like that's where I was for those 2 days, is that I was basically overthinking what I was eating. I was overthinking how much time I spend in the gym, and it was no longer enjoyable. I just didn't feel that autonomy, that free will, that feeling of I'm the one in control making the choices here. It's like I was being driven by a part of my mind, really the addictive part of the mind, to go, okay, we need to do this. We can't eat this. You know, all these bullshit thoughts, which in hindsight, if I had today, I'd be like, wait, actually, that's just a David Goggins-esque nonsense discipline, which has never actually served me. I will use the script for that thought because that's bullshit. And I know that freedom really comes from me making rational choices moment by moment. I know how to do that at all times. I don't need to have some weird conditions in my life. I can just take things moment by moment and then crack on and enjoy shit. So anyway, it's been a long ramble. I've not prepared this at all. I literally woke up this morning, had a coffee, read a bit of a different book, and then because I'd spoke to a client about David Goggins yesterday, and we were both kind of laughing at the absurdity of his thought patterns, I decided, let's do a video, right? Hopefully it helps someone. If you'd like to learn how to stop watching porn, I'm your man. I'll leave a link in the description so you can book in a free one-on-one call with me. Cheers and have a great day. Bye-bye.